And I love how you kind of talked about not only just the intricacies of, you know, what it's like to be a kind of arcane player, but it also like when you're writing and connecting those stories to the characters in the world, which makes me want to talk about the Visionaries, which it's so wild because I just love the like each one of these folks has their own mini sinister plan to kind of continue to be in this place that is this you know bizarro utopia, like you kind of talked about it. When did you what were the conversations that came about when building them as these kind of main characters that you have to not only, you know, learn about throughout the game to kind of learn what their motivations are and where, you know, how that leads to where you'll be able to find them, but, you know, also how they're connected to the powers that they have as well. It seems like there's a connection there too that's a little bit unsaid, but it has a connection there.
Yeah, it's so it's interesting. The Visionaries were really developed early. You could even say that parts of the traits and high concept for those characters actually predate Colt and Juliana's personality. Actually, Juliana being one of them, it's a bit different, but they predate the specifics, at least, of Colt's personality, which is interesting. If it's going to be an assassination game, your targets are, you know, who they are, etc., is important. So the lead narrative designer at the time, Sashka, was explored a couple of archetypes, trying to connect them with the world and with the underlying themes of the game, like they're all young and privileged and very 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 extreme, and they have this common trait of being very immature, I would say. Like even the smartest ones around, between them. And so that's why you have things like always something a bit infantile, to even sometimes to balance some of the, like for instance, Alexis, he's a cannibal. That could be pretty dark, right? But he also like candy and a certain weirdly flavored beer and and crappy music, homegrown music. Like there is something infantile even with the most threatening and most so there is this line that is optional because it depends whether or not you die with your first encounter with Juliana, if I'm correct, where she basically says something about we are all murderous children around here, including you, Colt. That is it's one of the things we wanted to express. And then of course I think Sashka and the narrative team wanted to have some diversity as well. Have them, I think one of the elements, like there is various ways to look at this group, but one way I like is for some of them at least, it's their belief system. Like there is this anomaly. For one of them, it will be almost a business opportunity. This is a pragmatic opportunity. There is something valuable here, eternal life and adoration. Like I'm in it. Like if that's what it is, I'm in it. For someone else, it will be a more mystical way of getting closer to her equivalent of what she thinks is God, so it's very more mystical. For someone else, it will be entirely scientific, 100%. For another one, it will be almost paranormal, like there is more to the world that we can see, but he's not into mystical stuff either, so he's more or Mulder or something. So their relationship with the loop, and sometimes it's their belief, sometimes it's their own, I would say, how do you say that? Hubris, like one of them is a star and he wants to preserve his voice, and it's a bit too late for him. So there is a number of cool, interesting things with that. Aspects of why would you want to be eternal, and why would you want to join this thing? And so they all represent something like that. But there is more. Like of course. The narrative team has been, as is pretty evident in the game, hard at work on all those characters. So I'm sure there is way more to that, but that's, I would say, the high-level approach.
I mean, I love the fact that it laid itself out in that way, because I think a lot of times when you get into a space where you have multiple bad people to have to kind of like eliminate, remove from a conversation, and they're in this kind of space, there's that kind of want to dig into like the 7 deadly sins and let me make each one of these a version of each sin. And I love that the fact you didn't go that route. There's tinges of it in some of it, but not in that full kind of, one-to-one connective piece. I love the fact you didn't continue to do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because that's what makes them a bit less predictable archetypes, so to speak. They feel like persons, not archetypes, and also I think it also helps with the interactions between them, because they have things to talk about. Like if you think about two targets in even in some of the Dishonored games, the relationship between all of them makes sense, but the relationship between this one and that one, sometimes you're like, yeah, they are very, very remote people who would not run into each other. Whereas our Visionary, they start off like that, but you understand how they became a tightly knit group with some love-hate relationships that can be, that are very fun to uncover through the minicoms conversations and the and I love the interview, like the interviews, there is some audio recordings of Juliana interviewing each of them and asking them the same set of questions. I'm in love with that dossier. It's really really fun to hear them answer questions like when did you realize that you had a vision? And they all have like a super crappy answer. Like, I love it.
It's great. I love that too, because it did humanize them in a lot of different ways. I was like, oh, like you're a super narcissist, but like you're also super horny. Like it's like weird, like all those kinds of things that are in the mix of like humans being humans, and wind up at a certain point kind of feeling like they had all gone to like summer camp. And it was like the most kind of diabolical summer camp that they wind up going to. So kudos to the team, the writing team, to build that into the world. Because I think that's also a part of the world building, right? Which is, you get a lot of messages and things kind of in the UI of things popping up for Colt and saying, here's where you need to be next. And here are the places you need to go. And here are the things you're thinking about, your previous self is telling you to kind of dig into. When did that become a part of the gameplay mechanic too? Because I think that is a thing that I love in games, is when you get to see some of that stuff up front.
You mean the floating text?
Yes, the floating text. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that I mean, it's cool because you could almost say that they are a character. Actually,
yeah.
They are 4 characters if we are very technical about it. But the point is that I think it comes from the concept. We knew everyone would be hostile. Like to simplify, everyone would be hostile on this world, and it can feel very. Why am I even trying to save this world if everyone wants to shoot me on sight and everyone says I'm a traitor and So we needed somehow a friendly face, so to speak. I guess, that's also something that, just to stay on that point, we wanted some friendly presence at least, but it didn't make a lot of sense to have another character that would be friendly. So we came with memories, like the things that are, it's reflections of yourself that are trying to help you out, but going through this process of you've been here before, and there is some thoughts that are almost infused in the world and in the stones, because you've been like the same way when you visit some place you haven't been in a long time, you have like rushes of flashes of memory of situations, people, smells, tastes and everything. And we wanted to give a little bit of that stream of consciousness but materialize it, so the player is like, is this real? And so it was, I think one of the reasons was that it was we needed a presence that is sometimes friendly but also have a dialogue. When the first versions of this feature all the lines were more or less in the same voice.
Yeah.
And it was a bit more. It was you forgot about it at some point.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I got who, I got it. But something that the team did that is wonderful is starting to think of its different versions of, like those thoughts come from different places. From you're being depressed, entirely depressed, like this is not going to work, or you're getting mad about it, like kill every M beep, like it's so extreme. The heroic version, like I will do it, like just one more loop, and like it's really cool because you have almost this dialogue sometimes, and you're following. And when we started to have those ideas, yes, narrative designers started to have fun and use them in interesting ways, and playing with the timing, the size, like doing some crazy. So it's cool because we gave them a very a nice way to like, not all narrative designers are writers, but if you're a narrative designer, you probably like writing. So definitely giving the narrative designers the opportunity to sometimes weigh in a situation and have this kind of note that reinforces or surprise or gives you another perception of the situation. It was very, I think, liberating for them. It allowed them to add tension or add humor to situations that would have been a bit vanilla without it. And it's also a great tool in the beginning of the game to tell to the player, it is normal that you're confused. This is extremely confusing. Look, of course, you're confused. It's confusing, but apparently you will get through it. And the player does. So it makes is this reliable into a sidekick by the end, which is cool.
I love that. And the thing that I remember during the first couple of hours of playing was just like, besides the like, this is guiding me, giving me information, it was just really funny. Like the writing is so good and funny and snarky, and Colt and Juliana's back and forth and play between each other is just so good in the way that it was written, and it felt very authentic in the way that all of them are kind of like, both of them are kind of digging into each other. What was the process around Colt and Juliana's writing? Because I think they take up so much of the airspace throughout the game, not only in voice and in chat and all those things and interactions. What were the kind of ways that you thought about conceptually they were going to kind of work together, and then how much of that actually got into the game and at the end?
Well, I'd say that for Colt and Juliana, we very quickly, because of the concept of the game, we determined that they will carry a lot on their shoulders, being the only persons who don't repeat. Like, they repeat, but their memory doesn't reset, I mean. So because of that, they would be the only the main how can I say metric of progression from the player. Like Colt's reactions to I did this is done is the major, like, of course there is the UI, but that's non-diegetic. That's us telling you that you completed something. But for the player, sometimes having this validation from Colt and then having Juliana question whether that was a great idea or not in the next tunnel, we knew those two would be extremely important. And because it's almost like you're having this journey in this weird land with two people. Like, those are your two road trip buddies, and they hate each other, like so you're in the car between two people who hate each other and who will throw their dirty laundry at each other all trip, and you're here and you're like among them. And that's the thing, it has to be kind of fun in a voyeur way, like you're like, yeah, I'm not here, but I'm listening because this is funny, like so I think that was something important. And we didn't want either Colt to be too serious, because I think it helps the player again feel better about failures, because in the beginning of the game you're failing at you're trying things and you don't understand and you're confused, and having Colt take all that with humor and with like, in a way, this is I'll get there eventually. Like, that's the thing. He doesn't seem very serious. He just does sometimes dismiss Juliana's tries to make him think seriously about things, but that's a way of protecting his goal and not having her whisper in her ear, this is not worth it, stop it. So he defends himself not by being angry, because I think that would have been kind of not a great stereotype either. So not by being angry and bitter about it and becoming an edgelord by the end, but on the contrary, like, hey, you're not going. It's a way of screaming to Juliana and to this entire impossible situation. You don't scare me. I can laugh about this. You're not. So it's interesting because he's not just heroic. Because that's something we wanted. Like, because Colt's motivation could be very selfish if we are not careful.
Yeah.
So, but one way of making him heroic was, because if you ask me what's Colt's superpower, I don't think it's the loop. I don't think it's the slabs.
Yeah.
I think his real superpower is that guy doesn't give up. He keeps on coming. He's a stubborn beep, and that's something I admire people who can go through with impossible things. To an extent, it was also kind of a beacon for us during this weird time developing a game from home in complex situations. He doesn't give up. I think one of the reasons we kind of like Colt, even if he's kind of a broken man, is because I like to think, I don't know what people think, but I like to think this is the kind of heroes that are good for us in a time like this, like the time we're going through with the world right now. Like, I'm going through this and I'm smiling about it, and I'm doing it with style, and I drop a one-liner in the face of impossible odds. That's what I personally, that's what I like with Colt. And for Juliana, we wanted to show, okay, so if you're going to stay in the loop forever and we're going to protect this loop at all costs, we need to see the benefits of the loops somehow. We don't want it to be so attractive that you're like, I don't want to finish this game then. But so that's why she's quite annoying with you, especially specifically. But at the same time, there is this woman is smart. She's confident.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of immature, like all of the Visionaries. Like, she wants to stay young forever. So there is obviously a part of kind of Peter Pan syndrome going on right there. But you can tell, like, when you read her backstory, where she comes from compared to the other Visionaries, and where she gets to, which is like, she's kind of the goddess of the loop now, like everyone else is a shadow, and she's the only real person with Colt. That's why she kind of like, don't come and don't rain on my parade, man. But the thing is that I think the way we see her is she's extremely smart. She's extremely sensitive. Like, she has a wide spectrum of emotions, but she's not scared. Like, she doesn't have any social anxiety. Like, because she's been there before. That's the least we could say. And she's not afraid. So if Colt will say something that will aggravate her, she will not pretend that she's not aggravated. She will be angry and storm on him. But if he says something funny or something cute, she will be okay with being like, oh, Colt, that's why I love you, you know? And so there is this kind of, what will she be about the next time? Because I think my favorite conversations actually are the conversations where you can feel something that we wanted as an intention. They are the most interesting thing in the world for each other, but they have opposing views. That's really the core of this relationship. She would be bored for all eternity, and she would never have become who she is if Colt didn't start his giant party pooping, and Colt, in a way, and not to get too much into the story, but definitely she makes Colt. Let's just say that she makes Colt stronger.
Yeah.
And that's her thing. Like I'm kind of training you into becoming a worthy opponent.
Yeah.
And there is, you see what I mean? So
Yeah, for sure.
I will beat you down, but I will not crush you enough that you will not come back, because I'm having so much fun when you come back.
It's an interesting it's an interesting like making someone better through aggravating and weirdly killing them within this interesting space. I have like two more questions before we have to let you go, because I know you have things to do as well. You have other loops that you have to go through in this world. Hearing you talk about Colt and Juliana, I think one of the things that we on our show, we always talk about spotlighting great characters of color, making sure that those folks get out there in the world and talking about those conversations. How awesome is it to have these two characters be the face of your game, be black folks, and your games sell like hotcakes right now? Like, how does it feel to have all of that? Because you talked about, all the ways that the characters are in a lot of times we see so many characters who aren't these fully kind of fleshed out characters, and especially characters of color. I'd love to hear your thoughts just about like how you're feeling about that part of it, how you're thinking about it, and was that a part of the conversation in the concepts of making Colt and Juliana a part of the world?
I say this very happy, first of all, for the first part of your question. Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, I'll drop a personal reason first, and then I'll go back to the game development. The personal reason is that my father is he's an actor. He's from Ivory Coast, so he's African. Came to France to have an actor career, and he did some great things, but it was extremely tough. Like France, by the time I was born, was not ready to have black leads, and to this day, it's not the most frequent thing, sadly, in our country. So, just having the so I know it was tough. It wasn't like an intention or anything from me. It actually it came from Sebastian, who wanted like the first version of Colt wasn't black actually. And one morning Sebastian came with a new sketch where he's black, and of course I'm like, and then some people in the team were like, yeah, but wait, why? Because like, we have this world and it's kind of icy, so we kind of expect people to be, looking like Russians or Polish people. So why that? And I think one of the things he said was, so okay, you probably seen some of the artworks, like for instance, this kind of Bond-like poster where you have all these characters, like kind of old-style movie key art. And he said something like, okay, imagine we do a movie, how do you call that, poster for this game, and you have all this cast of characters, but contrary to a James Bond or Avengers movie, the person that is in the forefront is a black man. And he said, I don't think I remember that. Like when there is only, when it's about a black character, of course he's on the front. When there is an ensemble, very often that's not who is in front. Like there is, you could make a case for Suicide Squad.
Sure.
But despite Will Smith's character being actually the leader of the team, the person we see the most of is
Harley.
Is Margot Robbie's character.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem. Like it works for this team. She's wonderful in etc. Yeah. But for us, I think Seb said, "Hey, let's do something that breaks the pattern a little bit," and and then I think people understood, and then every single question about let's make their hair correct. Let's make sure that we are very careful with harmful tropes, and like all those things came naturally without being, I would say, a plan from the start. It emerged, and we supported the vision from the artist. But like we're doing it good then. And then and I have to say, when I see this
Right.
and I see this art,
Yeah.
and I see those two, and I think of young, gamers that look like them. Of course, I'm a bit soft in the inside, because growing up. So my father was definitely my father was a role model for me, definitely. And so, but in movies he had this, he rarely had the first role unless it was an African movie. Then everyone was black, obviously, and so it was a bit. But he was still my hero. But the moment where I had another hero than my father was Storm of the X-Men, because she's black and she's African, which was even more important for me. And I think I really discovered Storm when I was living in the Ivory Coast, and I was a bit older, and I was like, and somehow she made me feel that everything was possible. And if that's, and I know the newer generation are a lot about like that about Miles Morales and other characters like that. So definitely happy. And definitely glad that besides the initial why, it wasn't a struggle. Neither was it with Arkane, nor with Bethesda, who entirely supported the vision. Like, I was almost expecting someone at some point to come and say, yeah, well, and it didn't happen. Like, we're growing as an industry. Like, that's the thing I was happy about. Like, it came in the conversations, but never at any point did anyone tried to steer us away from those choices. Again, I think that's not only am I feeling that I'm working with good people, but I think the industry in general, like, there is less and less excuses to not follow through your visions. I'm French, and we have a certain culture, for good, better or worse, that is a bit colorblind,
Sure.
to be honest, in France, for better or worse. So there's that. But again, without it being a strong intention, something we wanted to do from the get-go, that it ended up like this, of course, makes me satisfied as a person, and I like. Yeah, and I also like that I was actually worried about this conversation myself, not
Sure.
in the beginning. I think I only it only clicked at E3 when we're in the plane and we have this cool trailer in our bags. Like, we're like, oh, we're going to throw something amazing in front of people and see if they like it. We were proud, etc. And then at some point, I realized, seeing all those posters of other games, are like, wait a minute, we might be the only game with 2 black leads in our trailer.
Yeah.
How will that go? It's only when the trailer was close to be released that I started to stress: will that be weird? Will people feel bad about it? Of course, I don't care about the obnoxious people. Like, that's like, you have to live your life without caring about that, or you will be unhappy, right?
Right.
But so things like that aside, still, it was a question: how will it be received? And I'm glad that it wasn't in every discussion about the game. Yeah. That's something that makes me happy. Like, it's each time you make something like that and it's perceived as exceptional,
right,
it basically means that you're still having the issue. Like, the issue is still here, or it wouldn't be exceptional. Here it's like, oh, there is a celebration, but I don't think anyone says this is, like, it's not the thing about the game, which is I'm thankful for, because I would have I think I'm so anyhow, I think it's a good thing. And generally, if people like them as characters, it proves what everyone advocating for representation has always been saying. It's about them being great characters, of course, and let's just appreciate them as characters, and appreciate the fact that we have, heroes that look that we have a lot of different heroes in video games and in movies and in TV shows. Like I wish it becomes as natural in games as it is in movies nowadays.
Yeah.
That's the goal, and it's getting there.
I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw the initial kind of key art and everything kind of pop up, I automatically was like, I'm playing that. I don't care what's happening yet, because I didn't know enough about the game yet to kind of dig into all those parts. And I think that the thing that I'm finding, and the thing that I advocate for, not only in my day job in the game industry, but on the show, is I think that there's a conversation there industry wide about when you have Black characters, when you have characters of color up front, you don't remember just how many folks are behind the sticks playing who look like those folks, and why that matters, why marketing dollars matter going towards things like that, and that exposure to all of those conversations and all of those things. So I appreciate Seb breaking loop literally with putting Juliana and Colt on the cover. Last question before we let you go. It's been a conversation on social media a bunch about accessibility within the game, and hopefully being some changes or some addressing of some of the things that are there. Anything for the folks who are in the accessibility community about any upcoming changes that might be coming up?
Yes, definitely. So we are definitely seeing the feedback, and we are very thankful for the feedback. Sometimes it's even a bit specific, which helps. So definitely hearing the community loud and clear here, and definitely looking into it right now as we speak.
Perfect. Dinga, I have so many other things to talk about, like the setting and the 60s and all the stuff. There's so many things I want to dig into. Hopefully we'll be able to snag you again at some other point to come on to the show and rock for a longer time, but you've given us so much of your time today. I'm infinitely excited about the future of all the stuff that you're working on. It is amazing to see another brother doing this work and making this so good and continuing to push boundaries and making things probably one of the best games I've got a chance to play this year. So kudos to you and the rest of the team for making such a fantastic game within Deathloop. So thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you.
Thanks to you for having me, and the kind words that I'm sure the team will be very happy about.
Awesome. Everybody at home, these are the kind of conversations you have only on Spawn on Me. You don't get this anywhere else. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Peace.